In January 2018, a prisoner named Gonzalo Montoya Jimenez was found unresponsive in his cell in a prison near Oviedo, Spain. Two doctors examined him. No pulse, no breath. They declared him dead. An hour later, a forensic doctor examined the body again and agreed. That's 3 separate medical professionals, 3 separate exams, one conclusion. He was moved to the morgue, placed in a body bag, and his skin was marked with scalpel guidelines for the autopsy that would determine his cause of death. 4 hours after he was first declared dead, the forensic team preparing to open him up heard a sound coming from inside the bag. Snoring. He wasn't dead. He was cataleptic, a rare state where the body goes rigid, breathing shallows to almost nothing, and every basic sign a doctor checks for can disappear, while the person underneath it all is still alive. He was rushed into intensive care. A day later, he woke up and asked to see his wife. You'd think that would be the strangest version of this story. It isn't even close to the first time it's happened. In 1937, a 19-year-old French farmhand named Angelo Hayes crashed his motorcycle into a wall. The impact was so severe, his own parents weren't allowed to view the body. Doctors checked for a pulse, found none, and signed the death certificate. 3 days later, he was buried. He might have stayed that way forever, except his father had recently taken out a large life insurance policy on him. And the timing looked suspicious enough that investigators ordered an exhumation. When they opened the coffin, Hayes was still warm. He'd spent days underground in a deep coma. His body's oxygen needs so reduced by the head trauma that he recovered fully. He lived until 2008. And spent the rest of his life so haunted by what almost happened that he designed his own security coffin, fitted with an air supply and a radio in case it ever came close to happening again. Go back further, and it gets stranger. In December 1650, a 22-year-old servant named Anne Green was hanged in Oxford, convicted of a crime the evidence barely supported. She hung from the gallows for half an hour before being cut down and pronounced dead. Because she was a convicted criminal, her body wasn't buried. It was sent straight to a group of Oxford physicians for dissection. The next day, when they opened her coffin to begin, they heard her breathing, faintly. Doctors William Petty and Thomas Willis abandoned the dissection and spent hours reviving her instead, forcing warm cordial down her throat, rubbing her limbs, keeping her body heat up. She recovered completely. The court, taking her survival as a sign from God, pardoned her. 3 people, 3 centuries apart, 3 trained medical professionals, or teams of them, standing over a body, using the best tools available at the time, and reaching the exact same wrong conclusion. So what's actually going on here? Is this luck? Is it a miracle? 3 separate times? The real explanation is less mystical and more unsettling. Doctors call it apparent death, and it's a documented, recurring failure of diagnosis, not an exception to it. In severe trauma, shock, or certain neurological states, your body can enter a condition where blood pressure collapses, and the heart slows to a whisper. Not stopped, just moving so little blood that a hand on the wrist feels nothing. Breathing can shrink to a rate so shallow, a mirror held to the lips shows no fog. Pupils stop responding. Every simple test a doctor has relied on for centuries, the ones you'd assume are foolproof, can come back negative in a person who is, in fact, still alive. For most of human history, this was the actual line between life and death. Not a heart monitor, not a brain scan, a hand or an ear pressed to a chest, checking for signs that could be, and were, missed. By the 1740s, a Danish-French anatomist named Jacques-Benin Winslow had seen enough of these cases that he wrote an entire treatise arguing the tests doctors used to confirm death simply weren't reliable enough to trust. His work was translated and expanded by a French physician named Jean-Jacques Bruyère, who spread the warning further, and it triggered a genuine, decades-long panic across Europe. Coffins were patented with bells wired to the surface. Cities in Germany built waiting mortuaries, where the recently deceased were laid out for days, watched around the clock for the faintest rise of a chest. This wasn't superstition. It was a rational, engineered response to a real and repeated one that better equipment has only recently made rare, not extinct. Here's the part that should actually sit with you. The doctors who examined Hayes in 1937 weren't incompetent. Neither were the physicians standing over Anne Green's coffin in 1650, or the 3 separate doctors who examined Gonzalo Montoya Jimenez in 2018. Every one of them used the full standard of care available in their time. They simply ran into the limits of what a human body can hide, even from careful, honest examination. And that's the trap this channel keeps circling back to. Certainty feels like information. A doctor checking a pulse and finding nothing feels like proof of death. The same way a blank Polaroid felt like proof of invisibility to a man who robbed banks in lemon juice. The feeling of being certain and the fact of being correct are not the same thing. And the gap between them is exactly where people fall through. Sometimes literally 6 feet down. 3 people got to wake up. History doesn't tell us how many didn't, how many mistakes were never caught. Because no insurance investigator got suspicious, no forensic doctor happened to hear a sound, no one happened to notice a chest rise a second time before the lid closed for good. You are right now trusting a long list of lines exactly like that one. Lines you've never questioned, because no one has ever shown you where they crack. Most of the time, you'll never find out which one was wrong. 3 people did, and only because someone happened to be close enough and paying enough attention to notice before it was too late.